Alright, just gonna hit the ground running in this video. I'm going to start off by saying that I have barely taken this Dbrand kill switch off of my Switch 2. Now yes, there were some problems with the first release of this case and grip set, and it took Dbrand a second to get their responses right, but they were able to address the problems and provide replacements on their website. The funny thing though, I still was using the original somewhat precarious kill switch case on my Switch. I just kind of trained myself to not hold it in such a way that the Joy-Cons would come off the way that it was a problem. All of that said, I do have the replacements here, so let's swap everything out while I talk about why I like the kill switch so much. The main reason? Well, all of the parts are basically integrated without adding too much extra fuss to get the Switch 2 powered on and start playing. Now, I'm not really against like a nice case that I have to unzip to access my console, but when the case itself provides some better ergonomics alongside proper protection, I really appreciate it. And that's exactly what this kill switch does. First off, the rubber skin that goes around the main unit gives a little bit of shock protection while still leaving openings for all the various bits and pieces, like the speaker grills, the USB-C port and USB-C port, and of course the headphone jack and your game cartridge slot, even though I am pretty much all digital. And of course there's the kickstand. There's a little bit of a cover that goes onto the kickstand, which adds a little bit of bulk to that area, which means that using Dbrand's own dock adapter is kind of a requirement when you want to play this thing docked. But then these Joy-Con cases really help with the handling, and it's basically where many of my aha moments have come from. Especially when playing fully handheld and with the Joy-Cons connected to what is a larger Switch than before, the extra amount of grip back here really makes for a much more comfortable playing experience. It is still comfy to play with the Joy-Cons detached, but in most travel scenarios that I've been in lately, full handheld mode has been the way for me to play. Now couple all of that with the harder shell that goes around the full unit, and you get pretty much all the protection that you might need for the Switch 2. It's just a simple cover that attaches itself to the front end via this piece of elastic that goes around the bottom and just secures itself like this. And even if you have the elastic down here put on, which covers up the USB-C port on the bottom, you still have access to the one on top, meaning you can still charge this thing up even when it is inside the kill switch. Oh, and while there is a huge discussion right now regarding how Nintendo and third-party publishers are handling physical media game cards, I do have to admit that I'm getting all of my games digitally these days, so I'm just leaving out that game card holder that would normally go inside of the cover of the Dbrand kill switch, but it is nice that you can store your games within the whole setup here. All in all, it is the case that I've been using the most with the Switch 2 ever since it came out, and since it's come out, I do have a few extra thoughts I want to give about Nintendo's newest console. So that's how we're starting off. It's Joshua Vergara. What's going on, everybody? This right here is the Switch 2, and I have to give some thoughts on Nintendo's latest console while talking about my favorite accessories to use with it so far. I'm going to go through plenty of items here, and you can find links to them in the description and in the pinned comment below. Shouts out to EcoFlow for sponsoring this video, and you'll see how I'm happily using their charging solutions in a little bit. Now, if you remember my first Switch 2 video, I called it basically a step forward for handheld gaming that would have felt like a huge leap if we didn't already have all of the PC handhelds in the market already. If you're strictly a Nintendo gamer and you're coming mainly from the first generation Switch, yes, this is a big leap forward, one that affords you the ability to play many different games that are outside of the Nintendo ecosystem and take advantage of the Switch 2's hardware and performance. Games like Cyberpunk and of course my personal obsession of Street Fighter 6. I actually got to Diamond 2 with Sagat, and I did it with a leverless fight pad that is part of the accessory list in this video. With all of that said, it is important to see how Nintendo would handle their first-party offerings, of which there were very few at launch. In fact, there was really just one right here, Mario Kart World, and it took me about a week to roll credits on it, but it still is one very fun game to play. However, because that was the only game that came out at the launch of the Switch 2, it did feel like Nintendo was sort of relying on third-party games to pad the release of this new console, and for the existing library, Nintendo did provide some performance updates, which created some replayability for certain titles like Breath of the Wild. It is actually with the Switch 2 editions of those Zelda games that my girlfriend absolutely blew through Breath of the Wild and is now playing Tears of the Kingdom at high fidelity and better frame rates. In her words, she actually feels spoiled by the experience that is on the Switch 2 compared to how people first played them in the before times. It would seem all of this strategy and the promise of great first-party games coming soon did work out because the Switch 2 was outpacing the original in sales and it is a best-selling console already. We finally did, however, get a glimpse into what a new first-party game release would look like, courtesy of a certain gorilla. Now, I know I talked about the kill switch in particular as a way for me to use the Nintendo Switch 2 the most, but let's explore some other ways of protecting this little console. I'm actually going to go with a newcomer in the gaming space, and that is Belkin, a very recognizable name in the mobile space, but now they've jumped into gaming with the Switch 2 via a set of cases, and in this case, a tempered glass screen protector. If you're familiar with Belkin from the mobile side of things, you probably know that the screen protectors are usually pretty easy to install, and the same can be said for their Switch 2 screen protector that I'm finally going to put on right now. After a bit of the usual cleanup, you just have to use the included frame to line things up, prep the adhesive layer, and push any air bubbles out. Easy stuff. Belkin also has cases available for the Switch 2, and there are some of my favorites in the zippered variety, especially in this green colorway that is signature for Belkin. And now, while it may not be a skin or a grip case, Belkin did make sure to keep these cases pretty stylish and sleek enough to be able to keep the Switch 2 easily packable, which is a little bit more than I can say for the Kill Switch, as it does add a little bit more bulk in comparison. Again, Belkin's trademark green colorway is definitely a favorite for the slim case. There is also a thicker case, but that one is hiding an extra feature in the form of an included power bank for convenient integrated charging during storage. All that said, I do have a specific charging solution that I prefer, and it is courtesy of the sponsor of this video, EcoFlow. EcoFlow, experts in battery power, have recently released their rapid power banks and a lineup of chargers, all of which have one great feature quite literally up their sleeves. Yep, integrated cables. Honestly, this is one of those features that you don't realize you really need and is so freaking useful until you use it yourself. This EcoFlow Rapid Power Bank 25K is the star here, as it does provide a ton of extra battery life with the 25,000 mAh or 99.5 watt-hour capacity, which puts it right under the TSA limit. And you know what that means? This is my new favorite travel companion, and that includes while playing my Switch 2 on flights. The boxy design of the power bank actually helps with packing it, as it's easy to find a spot for it in my backpack. The screen on the power bank provides a look at the charging speeds, whether in or out, and has some fun animations to go along with the different charging configurations. I say configurations because there are a number of ways to connect to the EcoFlow Rapid Power Bank, and most of them don't even require extra cables. As I said before, there's this one retractable cable that comes out right here, and it's about 2 feet, which is perfect for when I need some juice during flights, and the power bank is stashed in the seat back pocket. The other cable is actually a little bit hidden. It is actually this carrying lanyard that dangles right off the side, but if you kind of take it out from here, it is itself a USB-C cable. And as a lanyard, it does help with handling the power bank and taking it in and out of bags. Every USB-C cable in use here, whether it's one of these 2 integrated ones or via the USB-C port here on the side, they provide 100 watts of power, allowing this to power all kinds of devices, from my laptop to the light that I use for recording my videos to, of course, the Switch 2. And EcoFlow ensures that this big power bank is safe to use with a life cycle of 300 charges while maintaining 80% capacity, and a battery management system that does self-diagnoses 8 million times daily. Whew, that's a lot, so that it can operate at safe temperatures below 45 degrees Celsius. This has been the way that I have kept my Switch on after I get the low battery warning during long Street Fighter 6 sessions, both on the go and even here at home, since it's easy to just reach for this and grab one of those integrated cables to charge things up. And the same 100 watts can be used to recharge the rapid power bank, giving it back 50% battery in about 26 minutes. I've charged up this power bank using the rapid chargers that EcoFlow also provided me, which come in 45 and 65 watt output varieties and sport their own integrated cables alongside extra ports for charging multiple items all at once, including the power bank itself. All in all, EcoFlow have a neat little ecosystem in the Rapid lineup, making for a set of chargers that are easy to travel with and a power bank that has made my travel, including with my Switch 2, a lot easier. Once again, a big thanks to EcoFlow for letting me try out their latest mobile charging products and for sponsoring this video. Now, you've heard me talk about Street Fighter 6 a bunch when it comes to the Switch 2, and legitimately it's the game that I've played the most with it. Like I said before, I'm climbing the ladder with Sagat, but I do truly believe that Street Fighter 6 is a great example of how the hardware of the Switch 2 actually helps elevate the overall Nintendo experience by providing a little bit outside of Nintendo's own umbrella. And yes, that includes the ability to accessorize with and beyond that second USB-C port up top. Starting things off with a first-party offering, I do have to say that this Nintendo Switch 2 Pro controller was kind of a surprise. This two-tone colorway here already looks really nice, but it's also the materials that make it feel very comfortable in the hand. The thing is, I'm talking about Street Fighter 6 here, I do think that this D-pad is a bit of that surprise. I'm very particular when it comes to the D-pad on controllers like this because, of course, I need to have the proper feel so that I can input all of the moves in these fighting game matches. And it's plenty comfortable for all the other games that are in the library as well, but I had to just give it some props for my particular Street Fighter 6 experience, well, when I'm not already using my real favorite controller for it. Which means we enter the leverless fight stick. Well, since there's not really like a stick on here, I would call it a fight pad. This first one is a bit of an oldie but a goodie, and this is the Snackbox Micro. This pad is a little bit smaller than most keyboards and it travels super well, though it requires a wired connection to the Nintendo Switch. Thing is, it does work right out of the box in that way. I used this pad with my PC handhelds and it plugged straight into the Switch 2 easily, making it easily slot into my gaming rotation. Now, if you're not familiar with leverless game controllers, let's think of it this way. Instead of the traditional directional stick that you see on old arcade cabinets and on typical fight sticks, you have straight up buttons for movement alongside the face buttons for all the different attacks. This is a little bit like having WASD on a keyboard, but it's situated in a specific way that facilitates optimal fighting form in games like Street Fighter 6. It's hard to go back to anything else after using a fight pad, but then you had 8BitDo jumping in with their own offering, and it's been right here this whole time. A new warrior has entered the ring. Here is the 8BitDo arcade controller, they call it. This is obviously bigger than my Snackbox Micro, but it boasts a few extra features that make it really worth it. First off, we have to enjoy the retro stylings. In this case, SNES meets retro arcade. But it's as modern as a controller can get because, as you can see up here, this controller is wireless. You have Bluetooth and 2.4 GHz connections here using the included dongle that hides right underneath next to this USB-C port, which you will use for charging and also for wired connections if you so choose to. Yeah, that's pretty much the reason why I love this thing. While docked, this controller works perfectly well with almost zero latency and I can still fight without any problems. The buttons all have the usual layout that you would expect on leverless fight sticks, but there's one cool touch. You can see here that the lighting changes depending on which side you're on. If you go over to the S for Switch, you'll see the button layout that's usually on Nintendo controllers. Go to the other side and you'll actually see it move over to something more like an Xbox or PC controller. And while every fight pad uses like the same kind of switches that are found in mechanical keyboards, this 8BitDo actually uses clicky switches that have that satisfying sound and bump that you know you're hitting the buttons just right. That level of tactility is important for accuracy in the heat of the fighting moment. And really, this arcade controller has kind of become the centerpiece of my rather eclectic setups here in my space. From playing straight on the Switch 2 on a desk or a coffee table to the docked modes that include the big projector screen back here, while playing wirelessly on the arcade controller on the couch. Now that brings me to the other games that I've been playing on the Switch 2, namely the first Nintendo game to actually release from the in-house developer, and that is Donkey Kong Bananza. For anyone that felt like the Switch 2 was leaning too much on third-party releases to make the new console worth the price, this new DK game might have alleviated some of those concerns. And that's because it's Nintendo kind of at its best, with the platforming of Super Mario Odyssey coupled with destructible environments that are just a blast to smash up. If anything, the Switch 2's hardware is getting pushed a little bit with this game, as the busiest of destruction can cause little slowdowns here and there according to some reports. I haven't noticed that much at all though, even when playing handheld, and certainly the console is pulling its weight once it's docked and powered. Now, while I'm not personally sure if I would give Donkey Kong Bananza the 10 out of 10 scores that it has gotten from a few outlets, I do think it deserves a lot of credit for proving that the Switch 2 is more than just a Switch 1.5 with the ability to play PC games. As long as Nintendo continues to put this much effort into their games and they learn how to take full advantage of the hardware and continue to do so, the Switch 2 will stand as a wholly unique experience that you can only get when you buy into the Nintendo ecosystem. There are a couple of, let's call them issues with that notion, however, because while PC handhelds provide the benefit of actual accessorizing and full expandability, Nintendo was walking a bit of a tightrope trying to do the same with various items locked behind a kind of wall that makes you only enjoy Nintendo if you buy Nintendo. I did already talk about this a little bit in my first Switch video, the fact that neither of these USB-C ports, and especially the one up top, which is supposed to be for accessories, neither of them provide any display output, making one of my favorite accessories for any handheld gaming console, and that's AR glasses, basically useless. Now, I know Viture is one of the only AR glasses brands that has managed to make their products work with the Switch 2, but I haven't gotten one of those sets for myself just yet. It's super frustrating because it's obvious that Nintendo does moves like this and making weird game cards as a way of locking you into their ecosystem and paying specifically them for as much of the Switch experience as possible. It makes for a weird situation where I'm a fan of the gaming and less a fan of the brand, and it also creates a waiting game for us gamers to see when any of the third-party brands find a way around what is seemingly a software limitation that Nintendo decides to employ in order to, let's face it, kneecap what could be an even more wide-reaching Switch 2 experience. Because look at what the possibilities can be when you have a little bit more freedom. This HDMI charging product by Gemdo, I believe that's the name, that I just got on Amazon, this is able to get around the docking limitations somehow, provided that there is another USB-C cable back here that is providing power alongside the HDMI connection. Now, it's not perfect, given that the color processing in this Gemdo, let's call it alternative docking solution, the colors are just off enough to be noticeable, but as the reviews on the Amazon listing would tell you, that actually kind of matters less than the fact that it's an alternative docking solution that actually works. And it's because of this product right here that I've actually been able to enjoy the Switch 2 during my travels a lot more, connecting it to hotel TVs or to any monitor or television at my girlfriend's place without having to relocate the frankly bulky first-party dock. This is what I and many of my peers are talking about when we say we wish Nintendo would just let these USB-C ports do what they should be doing. By letting the Switch 2 be a little bit more free, it can actually make the console even more of a go-to experience for people to take with them to play anywhere beyond just handheld. Consider the alternative. Nintendo just goes ahead and puts display output on these USB-C ports, and then you can just use that one cable to plug into the TV and maybe another cable on the other one, the other USB-C port for charging. But I guess that's just too simple for Nintendo, isn't it? And so, there you have it. Some of my favorite accessories that I am using so far with the Nintendo Switch 2, including a couple of interesting ones given the limitations that Nintendo just decides to put on their newest console. Because of that, yes, I did get a little bit heated at the end there, but it's because it's one of the only real problems that I originally had with the Switch 2 when I first got it, but it's still a problem now and it might continue to be for a while. But when it comes to games, it seems Nintendo fans are eating pretty well, I will say, considering what is being offered and what is coming. From the first-party perspective, exclusives will continue to make titles and the console itself potential must-haves, and we got a great example of that recently with Donkey Kong Bananza. Third-party offerings, or ports if you want to call them that, are mostly working well, with Street Fighter 6 being my shining example of how well they can work. While on the other hand, there are some reports that Elden Ring in particular looks and feels a bit rough in pre-release testing, which could expose how hard it is to actually stretch the Switch 2's hardware, but we'll have to see what happens when that game and other ones come out. In any case, I wanted to let you know again that I have links to every item that I talked about in this video in the description and in the pinned comment below. Thanks again to EcoFlow for providing one of my favorite accessories to use with the Switch 2 in their Rapid Power Bank 25K, oh, it was backwards there, and for sponsoring this video. But from there, I'm going to go ahead and call it on this one. Thank you so much for kicking it with me again today. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and enjoy your tea, everybody.